Hi, this is Bill. I'm the salty old Marine. Let's talk about increasing your VA disability ratings when you're over the age of 55. Why is it important? Well, many conditions worsen with age. A lot of us already know that. Veterans may not realize they can request an increase. So, for example, you may have a service-connected condition and you've just been riding on it and never thought about asking for an increase due to the condition having gotten worse. Some disabilities are easier to prove over time due to long-term medical records that you may have gathered. So here's some key points to cover. Common service-connected conditions worsen with age. Examples would be arthritis, back issues, PTSD, heart disease, and so on. So how do you document increased severity? Well, you do it with doctor's visits, pain management records, new diagnoses, lists of medications, that sort of thing. Basically, building up those treatment records over time. So we'll talk about the process for filing an increase claim versus a secondary condition claim and the potential pitfalls. Yes, there are some risks when you ask for an increase. Why is it important? Well, things like hearing loss and tinnitus, they're among the most common service-connected disabilities, especially for older veterans like me. Many don't realize they qualify for a higher rating or additional benefits. Let me give you an example. When I went in for my tinnitus claim, I also was tested for my hearing, and I received a 0% service-connected disability for my left ear. Now, in my decision letter, the VA recognized my MOS as military police as having moderate exposure to loud noises and therefore conceded that my hearing loss was more likely than not related to my military service. But it wasn't a sufficient amount of hearing loss to rate any money, so it's 0%. However, it's still service-connected. Here's why that's important. As I get older, my hearing may very well get worse. In fact, it probably will. When it does get worse, I can file for an increase. And if they put me through the audiologist tests again and find, in fact, that it has gotten worse, then I can get a VA disability increase from 0% to whatever percent based upon that. And I don't have to fight to prove that it's service-connected anymore. It's already service-connected. So it's important to get those ratings, but also to apply for increases when it becomes appropriate. Also, as we've talked about in previous videos, even after many decades of being out of the service, it's not too late to file for your first claims. Initial claims can always be filed, no matter what your age is. A lot of veterans assume that because they're older, they've missed their chance, right? I thought that too, personally. There is no time limit for VA disability. The biggest challenge is proving service connection after many decades. That can be tough, but we've talked about in previous videos how to get your missing records, your military records, your health records, your VA records, your private care physician records, and that sort of thing. You can also go back and reopen old denied claims if you have new and material evidence. Here's something a lot of people don't know. If you had a claim denied even decades ago, you can file a supplemental claim based on that original claim, and the VA will reopen it. Again, a supplemental claim has to provide new and material evidence. You can't just reopen it because. You can't just re-argue the same old material. But if you have more information, then in fact you can file a supplemental claim, even after decades. Common late life claims include things like hearing loss, tinnitus, arthritis, diabetes. For example, if you were exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam, that becomes a presumptive. PTSD that resurfaces in retirement. And in fact, that's kind of what happened to me. I am service-connected for PTSD, and even though I was suffering from it my entire life since the initial events, I didn't really notice it, didn't really pay attention to it. It had effects in my life, believe me, but I didn't recognize it as PTSD until I got older. And as I got older, it began to get worse. And that's when I finally decided to first seek treatment through the VA, and second, seek a disability, which I was in fact granted. But again, not until my 60s. And this happened when I was 18. So it's never too late. Don't think that it is. PTSD affects older veterans differently. At age 60 or higher, it's very different than when you're 30 and you think you can just shrug it off. When you have more time to yourself, your life has a little less structure around it, old memories have a way of coming back. Also, as we get older, we get things like higher rates of heart disease, high blood pressure, memory issues. Things that can also cause triggers for PTSD that maybe occur later in life, unfortunately: divorce, loss of a spouse or a loved one, retirement, sleep problems, things like that. If your symptoms have worsened, let's say you're service-connected for PTSD and it's getting worse, file for an increase. So, what's the downside? Well, there is one. If you file for an increase for a disability, you open yourself up to being reevaluated. And if, in fact, your condition has improved, you could face a reduction. So let's say, for example, that you had, like me, a 50% rating for PTSD. And years later, your PTSD has gotten much worse. And so you file for an increase. And they put you through a C&P exam, and the C&P exam notes that you have not been getting treatment for your PTSD and disagrees with you that it's worse. And worse than that, says that you don't even meet that 50% criteria anymore. Yeah, the VA might just reduce your rating instead of increasing it. So, there is a risk. What that means is you need to be sure that when you file for your increase, you meet those standards, and you can prove you meet those standards. I mentioned just now, sort of in passing, a C&P examiner noting that you hadn't received treatment for your PTSD. Maybe that should be telling you something. Maybe you should be receiving treatment for your PTSD. Don't just assume that once you have a claim, it's static forever. It might be, and it might not be. But if you file for an increase, you've just opened the door to being reevaluated. So maybe it would be good if you kept getting treatment and you had a record of that treatment. Just saying. Okay, this is Bill. I am the salty old Marine. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me about your experiences with filing for increases, with getting older, with having conditions that get worse over time. And as always, have a great day.